Hello, welcome back, Professor Sharma. Namaste.
Namaste.
Very nice to see you again. In our last conversation, we talked about how India as a civilization, you said, is unique compared to other civilizations, that we have been studied and observed by outsiders, starting all the way from Greeks to Muslims to the British. And today we can continue that conversation and we can talk about that book, which I think remains still, I think, influential, a book called The Wonder That Was India by A.L. Basham. And
Yeah,
so we can discuss about that book. And Professor Sharma has that book, so maybe we can show the viewers the book and we can.
yeah, okay. So now I'm not getting the split screen this time.
No, it'll be taken care of by Skype, yeah. So that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I can only see myself in a
Yes,
small aperture-like thing
yes.
at the top. Yeah, okay. Because last time we were half and half.
No, after the recording, it becomes half an hour automatically.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to connect what we are going to do today
Right.
to what we did last time.
Right.
Because if you mentioned how we have been studied by foreign cultures.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting point as to have we studied them or not?
Yes.
And that's a separate issue, and
Right.
we'll take it up some other time.
Right.
But pursuing the course we were on last time,
Mm-hmm.
uh, if, okay, in the case of the Greek tradition, it was not so much of a problem because our own self perception was not directly affected by what they thought of us.
Right.
In the case of the Islamic, there is a more
Mm-hmm.
there's a greater possibility, more of a chance,
Mm-hmm.
that our own self understanding may have been affected. But in the case of the British presence in India, or you might call the Western presence in India, it is a more acute problem
Mm-hmm.
because of the reconstruction of India's past
Mm-hmm.
by the foreigners,
Mm-hmm.
mostly Westerners,
Mhm.
and by our tacit acceptance of it so far
Mm-hmm.
for various reasons. So the question becomes quite serious. How do we judge to what extent
Mm-hmm.
our self perception has been affected uh, by, by what the West, uh, through, by being mediated
Mm-hmm.
through the West?
Yes. Right.
Now, one way of doing that would be to look at all the Indologists,
Mm-hmm.
Western Indologists,
Mm-hmm.
who have worked in the field,
Mm-hmm.
and to analyze their conclusions and to compare them with the evidence and to assess their conclusions in the light of the evidence and so on. Or the optional course would be to choose one figure who summarizes the conclusions reached by
Mm-hmm.
Western scholarship
Mm-hmm.
and presents them under one cover. Now, the book which comes closest to achieving that, fulfilling that condition, I think, is Professor A.L. Basham's the book, The Wonder That Was India, the book you just referred to earlier.
Right.
Now, one reason for choosing this book is that it is the most widely read book
Mm-hmm.
uh, on Indic civilization, certainly in the West,
Mm-hmm.
and probably also in India. So that is one reason for choosing it. The other is Professor Basham had many Indian students,
Mm-hmm.
Indian scholars who ultimately are his students.
Mm-hmm.
I believe uh, Professor Ramila Thapar, is one of them. One of our very prominent historians at the moment, and so are many others. Dr. Devahuti, who has written a book on Harsha, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I think even Professor Sharma, Ram Sharan, who has a book on Shudras in ancient India.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So many major Indian scholars of the current generation are his former students. The book has been very well reviewed. I'll quote a review. From the listener.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Basham writes with admirable clarity and sturdy good sense. The earlier Indian attitude to life, with its passionate delight in the senses, its gentle tolerance and kindly humanity, excites his enthusiasm. And this is well transmitted through some exceptionally fine translations of poetry and prose. As a sympathetic and intelligent introduction to Indian culture, this book could hardly be bettered. It's a very handsome tribute there.
Yeah.
It's the most widely read book.
Yes.
And widely praised.
Mm-hmm.
And Professor Basham himself is a major figure in the field who taught not only in the UK but also in Australia. Excuse me. So I think we would do well
Mm-hmm.
to use this book
Right.
to follow through on our earlier discussion and to give it concrete shape.
Yeah.
A proposition has been stated that when one culture is self-understanding is mediated by another culture's understanding of it, and it is likely to be affected by this mediation. And to the extent that it is affected, the self-understanding of the original culture is not on all fours with its quote unquote authentic self-understanding, which would have emerged if that intervention had not taken place. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now I want to make it very clear that what I'll be trying to do would be to critique Professor Basham's book, not criticize it necessarily. So that, and I use the word criticism here in the sense of adverse criticism, so that I will see what he has to say and assess what he has to say, where it seems to me there is a problem as a result of the reception of our own tradition through the West. But I also, where I find that he may have done a very good job, or whether we may have even benefited from this process. If there are such moments, and I'll also like to point them out. So it's a critique rather than a criticism. I want to make this very clear. Now, the version of the book which I am taking up is third revised edition of 1967, which has, I think, run now into its at least its 27th impression. It was first published in 1954. Professor Basham's book. And the revision I'm referring to, the third revised edition, appeared in 1967. So it is the 67 edition.
Mhm.
In its the version in the impression I have, and published in India by Rupa, is the one I'll be using.
Maybe you can show the cover of the book.
Oh yeah, here it
A Wonder That Was in Us by Professor A.L.
is.
Basha. Little up. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. It's a sizable book, runs into 568 pages,
Mm.
and I would regard it
Mm.
as the modern counterpart to the Indica of Megasthenes
Ah.
and the Kitabul Hind, one of the names of Al-Biruni's India,
Oh, okay.
or to Al-Biruni's India. Let's put it just that. Let's put it that way.
Megasthenes and Al-Biruni and A.L. Basha.
The Greek account of India, and then the Islamic account of India, and then the Western account of India. Okay.
That kind of a milestone, yes.
So, yeah, it's a milestone, no doubt. So let us begin with the title,
Mm.
The Wonder That Was India.
Yes.
I remember some years ago
Mhm.
receiving a call from Arindam Chakravarti, who was proposing a, a session on, or maybe even a grant proposal on the wonder that is India.
Ah.
And yeah, I mean the campaign to publicize India, known as Incredible India, is a popular way of saying the same thing.
Yes. The wonder
The
still.
wonder that is India. This could be a very nice. This fact that it has this title could prove to be a very interesting introduction to what we are going to do as a first step.
Right.
What we are doing, because when you call it was India, then you are referring to the past.
Yes.
And the past is usually supposed to be dead.
Yeah. Like a museum piece.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
Why did Professor Basham choose to call it that way?
Mm.
Or whether we need to ask even whether Professor Basham wanted to call it that way,
Mhm.
because I was told by Professor Singhal,
Mhm.
D.B. Singhal,
Mhm.
that this book was in a series. The other titles in which ran like The Wonder That Was Rome, The Wonder That Was Greece,
Ah.
and so on. So it may be just the publishers
Right.
did.
Yes,
You know,
it is.
for a long time,
Mhm.
one of the reasons why a very well-known book in our field uh, on Islam was called Mohammedanism
Ah.
was because the publisher wanted it that way.
Okay. That word is no longer in use.
So we
Oh.
have to, yeah, now we use Islam.
Mhm.
So we have to watch out for the publisher.
Right.
We should not confuse the publisher's decision with the author's.
Yeah.
So I do not know whether Professor Basham wrote this book in the spirit
Mm.
that it is a past civilization.
Mm.
Perhaps not, because in some parts of the book he says, somewhere in the book, that the Bhagavad Gita will continue to inspire people of men of action in India,
Mm.
you know, and men and women of action in India,
Right.
and Upanishads, thinkers of India.
Right.
So he probably had a more positive view
Mm.
of the survival of the tradition
Mm.
into the future.
Mm.
But the idea that the Indic civilization is a past civilization is a very strong one.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
we need to address that
Yes.
as a one major issue
Mhm.
when we receive our tradition
Mhm.
through another culture.
Mm. Yes. Mediated.
mediated by another culture.
Mhm.
You see, Max Muller,
Mhm.
in his correspondence
Mhm.
with his peers, referred to the religion of India as dead.
Oh, okay. I figured like Max Muller also
Max Muller
saying dead already dead.
referred to it as dead.
Wow.
Sheldon Pollock, in our
Mhm.
own times,
Mhm.
has this well-known article with the title "The Death of Sanskrit."
Dead language. Sanskrit is a dead language.
The death of Sanskrit.
Right.
And when I was a student,
Mhm.
general any reference to Sanskrit was usually as a dead language.
Yeah.
Yeah? Uh, Latin used to be called a dead language
Mhm.
by the English students
Mm. Mm. Mm.
when they were taught classics,
Okay. Mhm.
and they had this doggerel. And Latin is a dead language, dead as dead can be.
Oh.
First it killed the Romans, now
Oh.
it's killing me.
Oh. Okay. So in that same vein, they were applying the same
Yeah.
thing.
So
Sanskrit.
there is a tendency
Right.
uh, in some sections of Western scholarship about India
Yeah.
to treat it as a dead culture,
Mm.
or at least a moribund culture,
Mm.
dying
Mm.
culture.
Mm.
And this, I'm afraid, uh, this tendency
Mm.
uh, is also there, uh, is then reflected in the works of Indian scholars
Yes. Yeah.
who imbibe the same attitude and then start despising
Yeah.
what is their own under the impression that it is dying or dead.
Yeah.
And they are coming into this new world,
Mm.
call it the modern world or whatever. As a recent example of this,
Mhm.
I'd like to refer to an excellent book, Culture of Encounters,
Mm.
Sanskrit at the Mughal Court
Mm.
by Audrey Trushke. An excellent book,
Mhm.
uh, which I've used to good effect. But this is what she has to say.
Mhm.
She's a Sanskrit scholar and also a scholar of Indo-Persian, and has been much in the news because of her views on Aurangzeb and others. You might be familiar with that.
Yes.
She says this on page 240 of her excellent book, mind you. It is about Sanskrit. But few would contest, she says, that Sanskrit is no longer an energetic, living intellectual or literary tradition in modern South Asia.
Mm.
Most of its core knowledge systems are considered obsolete, and the few that have survived, such as traditional medicine, Ayurveda, have been significantly changed by the forces of colonialism and modernity.
Mm.
So it's the same attitude
Mhm.
that whatever merit there may have been in the past,
Mhm.
in the languages or even the religion of that culture, the past is past,
Mm.
so far as that civilization is concerned. And the
Right.
sooner the adherents of the view that it has a future accept this, the better for everybody. It seems to be the unarticulated assumption.
Yeah. Can you show this book also in the camera? Yeah. Culture of Encounters, Sanskrit at the Mughal Court by Audrey. Yeah. At Rutgers, yeah. She was a student of also Professor Sheldon Pollack.
Now, this is a very serious matter. Although we have been talking about it lightheartedly.
Yeah.
Why would people want to treat it as dying or dead? Why would they not look upon it as something living, which has a contribution to make? Yeah.
Right. Very serious when you ask that question.
Yeah. Which can contribute to life in the modern world. As far as any culture would.
Yeah.
I think this has to do with the obsession of the West with control.
Yeah. There should not be any challenge to the Western hegemony.
It goes to control. Now, I came to this conclusion in a very interesting way. To the conclusion that control, now I don't want to, blaspheme the whole culture and all. It's a very important strand in Western civilization. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Because I was reflecting on the paradox that Western science is based on accuracy, fidelity to fact, observation, objective observation. So far as the physical sciences are concerned, when it comes to human sciences, is the opposite. As Edward Said has demonstrated, yeah, to the attention of many of us.
Yes.
Has drawn our attention to this, drawn the attention of many of us to this fact.
Yes.
That it is not quote unquote objective. It does not describe things as they are.
Yeah.
But as it sees them.
Right.
Or even as it would like to see them and so on.
Yes.
Yeah? Well, how do we explain this paradox? The same culture whose fidelity to truth is admirable in the sphere of science, physical sciences, is seriously remiss when it comes to the observing the same fidelity in depicting other cultures other than its own when it comes to the human sciences. And one possible resolution of this, I suggest, could be the idea of control. You can only control natural forces if your attention to it is accurate. And you have fidelity to truth, to the reality as you see it. But in the human sciences, you can manipulate that reality by how you present it. So although these are contradictory approaches, they are unified by the point of control, by the perspective of control. In order to control one, you have to be absolutely faithful to the data.
Yes.
In order to control the other, you may have to manipulate that data.
Right.
Yeah.
The goal is to control and
humanize.
Yeah.
So that when you are dealing with nature, the same control demands a certain attitude from you, which it does not when you are studying society or culture. This is a kind of a lighter, in a lighter vein. The typical comment by ICS officers when they were facing certain situation was, the situation is under control. It's even now the catchword in administration in India.
Situation is under control.
I remember lightheartedly my own brother-in-law who was in the IAS called me on his way to America. And when I said, how are things? He said, they're under control. And laughed because we both belong to the administrative service.
You were an IAS also.
Yeah. So that's one side of it. Now, I want this point to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Although we are talking about it lightheartedly, because it has very subtle applications. Now, I don't know how many people know that when India wanted to set up its first steel plant, it was thoroughly opposed by the West. Well, at least America. Let's be careful.
Okay.
At least by the USA.
Okay. Why? I didn't know that. Okay.
That is the question to ask. Why?
Why?
The whole article by Ved Mehta in one of the archives of archived editions of the New Yorker.
No. Okay.
On the extent to which America went out of its way to prevent India from producing steel.
It's surprising.
They said, we will give you steel. Your strength lies in agriculture.
How can you be producer? You should be.
So, if you want it, we'll give it to you. When we insisted that, no, we want to produce it in India, they even said, we will give you what is it called? There's a fancy phrase for it, turnkey.
No.
That is, we'll make the whole thing and give you the key. It's a turnkey proposal.
Okay.
Indians should not manufacture. Why? When they become powerful?
Yeah.
And they lose control?
It's like the textile industry, what happened in the British times. They want to raw material from India.
Yeah. Perhaps that, but there could be a pure economic motive.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a deeper motive. It's real power, military power, right? Once you make steel, you can make tanks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, even that, yes. So
this idea of control is a very, very powerful idea. And maybe they are themselves not aware of it. Because it's in the culture. Just as they have the outsider's advantage of looking at us, we have the outsider's advantage of looking at the Western civilization. Yeah.
Yes.
And come up with perhaps sometimes disturbing conclusions. But just as it happens with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to take this seriously into account.
Yeah.
Okay. So we started with that. Now let me start going through the book.
Okay.
On page 2 of the book.
Page 2. Okay.
Yeah. He makes 2 remarks. The first one I found very helpful, very brief one, and it is about Sri Lanka. And he says, and I quote him now, quote, geographically, Ceylon, which of course as we know is the earlier name for Sri Lanka, is a continuation of India. Geographically. The plain of the north resembling that of South India.
Yes. Right.
And the mountain in the center of the island the Western Ghats.
Okay. Okay.
I thought this was a very helpful observation
Uh-huh.
in relation to the geography of.
Right.
Yeah. On the same page, however, you also have this comment.
Uh-huh.
The southeastern part of the peninsula,
Uh-huh.
the Indian peninsula,
Right.
I'm quoting Professor Basham now. The southeastern part of the peninsula forms a larger plain,
Mm-hmm.
the Tamil country,
Tamil Nadu, right. Mm-hmm.
the culture of which was once independent
Oh, okay.
and is not yet completely unified
Oh,
with that of the north.
wow. Okay.
The
Okay.
Dravidian peoples of South India still speak languages in no way akin to those of the north
Oh, right there. Right
and
there.
are of a different ethnic character.
Um,
Though there has been much intermixture between northern and southern types.
okay. Phase two itself is so striking.
Yeah. Okay. Now the things to consider are
Yeah.
the culture of which was once independent. How do we know that? What is the historical evidence for that? There is no body of Tamil literature which shows no connection with what we now call Hindu culture.
Mm.
And this I have it directly from some major modern scholars of Tamil,
Mm.
Western scholars.
Mhm.
I asked them this question point blank.
Mhm.
Is there any stratum of Tamil, ancient Tamil literature
Mhm.
which does not show traces of Vedic
Mhm.
culture?
Mm.
And they said none.
So it does show Tamil ancient culture does show links with
Elements of, like the sacrificial
right,
rites and so on.
right. It does show the connection, and yet the
So what the point which strikes me is,
Mhm.
was once independent is an assumption.
Huge assumption.
Now, that assumption does not befit a historian,
Mm. Yes.
right? Uh, who is to restrain the exposition, his
Mhm.
or her exposition to the facts.
Yes.
Now, one can say that it could have been independent,
Mm. Yeah. That
was
is
perhaps independent.
right.
We have no problem with that.
Right.
Was independent.
That's an assertion, problematic.
Yeah, it's an assertion. It's not a conclusion based on facts.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then, not yet completely unified with that of the North. Now, this is so Western
Mhm.
that there has to be a unified culture. Wait, this is a plural culture.
What's yeah.
It should never be unified
Yes.
in this sense that they have to be identical.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. It cannot be monolithic. Yes.
yeah, it cannot be monolithic. We cherish these differences.
Yes, we love it.
But
Very
we also want to have things in common
yeah.
so that we form one large body.
Right.
Yeah, similarly, people interested in similar things.
Right.
But we don't. We celebrate our diversity. The fact that we have this Ayappa shrine
Mhm. Mhm.
with all these rules I never knew about for a long time,
Right.
yeah, was a source of great delight to me that, this is how religious life is led in Kerala.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Page two, say right there from page two, the problems start.
Yeah. Then, third point,
Uh,
Dravidian peoples of South India still speak languages
mm.
in no way akin to those of the North.
Huge problem. This is.
This is a huge problem here for a couple of reasons. First is, one major feature of those languages had to be the retroflex. Ta 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 ta.
Tetrahedron, right.
Not supposed to be Indo-European.
Uh-huh. Right.
It is there in the Veda.
Yeah.
The very first verse, which is cited in the Rig Veda, Agni Mure Purohitam.
Yeah. And Gananam Ganapati. Yeah. Retroflex. It's all retroflex.
It's already there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No way akin to those of the North.
Yeah.
One point. The second point is even more on the point on this very point, so to say.
Yeah, sure.
Is this idea that they are not akin or part of the same linguistic family is a modern development.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that we are now reading the past
Mm-hmm.
in the light of the present.
Mm. Reconstruction of the past.
In the light of the present.
Yes.
You may say
Mm-hmm.
that they thought they were part of the same family of some kind, language family, Indic language family, more deeply connected than modern scholarship can prove.
Mm-hmm.
And they were mistaken. You can say that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the peoples of India did not feel that difference,
Yes.
then how do you factor that into this statement?
Yeah.
It may be a fact. It may be a linguistic fact.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the well-known the whole point that Tamil and Sanskrit are the two eyes of Shiva.
Mm-hmm.
It's a well-known statement
Mm-hmm.
in Tamil culture.
Mm-hmm. Part of
And
the same family.
the first formulator of the grammar of
Mm-hmm.
Tamil
Mm-hmm.
is connected with Agastya,
Ah, Maharishi Agastya, right.
Maharishi Agastya, who associated with the north, who came to the south.
Mm. Yes, yes, yes.
So the first grammar of the language is, of course, does not mean
Mm-hmm.
that was his language.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is that the emotional attitudes
Mm.
with which these languages interacted
Ah,
would be very different with the
yeah.
kind of attitudes we now encounter,
Ah.
where there is hostility to languages of the north, at least in
Yeah.
some or even many quarters in the south. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that whole dimension of Indic culture tends to get obscured
Ah. Totally ignored here. Yeah.
by a statement like this.
Yeah.
As Professor Nagaswamy has
Uh-huh.
explained these points very well
Ah.
in his discussions with on internet,
Okay.
on videos, available on the internet.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is
Yeah.
so the first point was regarding the geography, the
Mhm.
geographical parallels between India and Sri Lanka.
Right.
Most welcome.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have this whole passage,
Yes.
which presents us with serious difficulties.
Yes. A lot of assumptions and assertions. Yeah. Yeah.
Also makes a very useful observation on page 3
Uh-huh.
when he says that the attitude of the Indians towards rains,
Mm-hmm.
towards rain, torrential rain even,
Yeah.
the monsoon is different from that of a Westerner.
Okay.
To the Indian mind, I'm quoting him now, to the Indian mind, the coming of the monsoon corresponds to the coming of spring in Europe.
Okay. Okay.
For this reason, thunder and lightning
Uh-huh.
in Europe generally looked on as inauspicious,
Uh-huh.
have no terrors for the Indian,
Okay.
but are welcome signs of the goodness of heaven.
Okay.
End of quote.
Okay.
This is an interesting observation.
Yeah, this is, we do welcome the monsoon with open arms, and we
Yeah.
start in the streets. Yeah,
Very nice, yes.
yeah.
Then on the same page,
Uh-huh.
he has the following comment. On the role climate might be playing
Mm-hmm.
in determining the habits of a culture.
Okay. That's one of my interests also. See connection in climate and culture.
I'll quote him now.
Yes.
India, on the other hand,
Mm-hmm.
was blessed by a bounteous nature
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
who demanded little of man in return for sustenance,
Oh.
but in her terrible anger could not be appeased by any human effort.
Oh.
Hence, it has been suggested,
Mm-hmm.
it's not Professor Basham's view,
Mm.
hence it has been suggested, the Indian character has tended to fatalism and quietism,
Okay.
accepting fortune and misfortune alike without complaint. End of quote. But this is the Purva Paksha.
Ah.
His own comment is,
Ah.
how far this judgment is a fair one is very dubious.
Okay. Okay. At least he's
I
aware of.
think he's moving in the right direction.
Right. Right. Good. Yeah.
Let me quote him further.
Yeah.
His whole defense, sort of, so to say, of the opposite position,
Uh-huh.
so very elegantly done.
Uh-huh.
How far this judgment is a fair one is very dubious,
Mm-hmm.
though an element of quietism certainly existed in the ancient Indian attitude to life,
Mm-hmm.
as it does in India today.
Mm-hmm.
It was never approved by moralists.
Ah.
The great achievements of ancient India and Ceylon, their immense irrigation works and splendid temples, and the long campaigns of their armies do not suggest a devitalized people.
Wonderful. Yes. Very nice.
If the climate had any effect on the Indian character, it was, we believe, to develop a love of ease and comfort,
Ah.
an addiction to the simple pleasures and luxuries so freely given by nature,
Ah.
a tendency to which the impulse to self denial and asceticism on the one hand, and occasional strenuous effort on the other, are natural reactions.
Ah. It's
End
pretty,
of.
pretty nice. Yeah.
So this is balanced and judicious.
Yes. Balance.
But
Ah, okay. There is a but after that.
the extent to which
Mm-hmm.
this thinking,
Uh-huh.
which Professor Basham has criticized,
Uh-huh.
pervades the Western mind
Ah.
is astonishing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Indians
I
are
can
still
say that, I
vitally.
can say that on the basis of a personal experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Professor Montgomery Watt
Mm-hmm.
once came to the Harvard Divinity School
Mm.
and delivered a lecture on Islam.
Mm. Mm.
Islam.
Mm. Mm.
At the end of that lecture,
Mm.
somebody, actually, this was the first question
Mm.
at the end of his lecture. To what do you attribute the malaise in Islamic society
Mm.
at the moment
Mm. Mm.
in modern times?
Mm.
And Professor Montgomery Watt said, it has something to do with the climate.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe my ears.
Yeah, very direct. Direct.
Earlier, I could not believe my eyes that
Yeah.
I was seeing Montgomery Watt in person,
Uh,
who has lovely books on, very fine books on Islam and the Quran.
mhm.
But I could not believe my ears when he said this.
So direct, yeah.
And the student who had asked this question
Uh,
came back. Sir, don't you think this is a very superficial explanation?
uh, uh-huh.
To which he basically didn't say anything, and people passed on to other questions.
Okay.
But I was totally shocked
Yeah.
that That, you know,
Mm.
so while it's good to see that Professor Basham has not fallen into this trap, so to say,
Right.
from our point of view,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thinking is very much present.
Mm. Mm. To blame the climate for any cultural issues. Right?
To climatic explanation
Right.
of a culture.
Yeah.
And one has to wonder why this is so.
Mm.
See, this is these issues are very deep,
Yeah.
especially in the context of cultural encounters.
Mm-hmm.
If you are ruling over another country
Mm.
and it's not doing well,
Yeah.
and you are the obvious rulers,
Mm.
then how do you justify this situation? You have to blame nature or culture,
Or both, maybe.
or both.
Yeah.
But their nature or culture,
Has to be superior. Yeah. Right.
right,
Yeah. But they are the
to prevent yourself coming into the being placed in the dock.
Yeah. Right.
So one of the most penetrating statements
Mm-hmm.
I've read
Mm-hmm.
for the explanation of India's poverty,
Mm-hmm.
that there are only two possible explanations:
Mm-hmm.
Hinduism or imperialism.
Wow.
And that is why
Mm.
imperialists
Mm-hmm.
and now Western scholars
Mm.
must always somehow find something to blame in Hinduism
Yeah. Blame on that.
or in nature if they want to, culture or nature, that binary,
Yeah.
to keep
Their hegemony. Basically.
the West off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Through imperialism, it would then help be guilty of what India is now. But now, of course, it's much better. I mean, what it was in
Right.
48,
Yes.
47.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that should be enough for today.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. That was really insightful, and hope we'll continue this conversation and we'll get
Next time, we will move on to
yes.
the discussion of the treatment of the discovery of ancient India.
Okay. Wonderful.
The history of theology briefly.
Yes. Wonderful. Next Sunday. Yeah. Every Sunday.
Professor has to say, what do we have to say in response to what he has to say?
Yes. Wonderful.
Okay, thank you very much.
So much, Professor Sharma.
Bye.